Hello guys, the previous episode we talked about the fact that the we wrote a code, a particular kind of code that calculates the length of a word using a specific kind of code block. Using this while length word is greater than 0. So once the length of the word is greater than 0, which it is here, so you can see that there's a dot. That dot is considered as a character. So while it is greater than 0, then the word will assume an input which you type in the computer, and then if the length of that input is greater than maxi, which is 0, of course, which it will be except you type nothing, so then maxi will assume the length of that word. So this is the function of this code is ensconced in between line 20 and 22. So this is where the real function is practiced, is carried out, because that block of code, it ensures that once the length of the word you type is greater than the previous length of the maximum will assume the new length. But if it's lesser than, the maximum will remain the previous greater length. So when we executed the code, that was last episode, we got something like this. So starting with the word, so I'm going to type some words now. This is third episode. So when I click enter, you see that it gives me a product. The longest line was 21 characters long. So if I type another sentence and that sentence happens to be longer than this previous one, let's say this is Nigeria, so it will still assume the previous longest sentence. The status won't change. But if I type a sentence, let's say assume I just type gibberish, and that happens to be more than 21 characters, it will automatically update to the new maximum. So that's what the code does. And even though it doesn't solve any practical problems, but it can also be implemented in a bigger solution, because most solutions to coding problems, they're actually complicated and they involve lots of code, of which this could be related to it. So basically, we in this episode we're going to be dealing with a fundamental explanation of how Python works. So basically, Python. So I guess we need to clear this code block for the meantime. So here we have this. So I've gotten rid of the previous code block. Then we have a new slate to explain today's lesson. So today we are just going to be dealing with the fundamental nature of how Python works fundamentally. Now, when you tell somebody you are trying to code, it means you are trying to program the computer. And programming simply means you are trying to create commands that whenever um you um you spell those commands out, the computer will always carry out the corresponding and intended instructions. So for example, we talked about this in previous episodes. When I'm talking about the print statement, print, print, and then you insert your your variable to be printed, close. This is a string anyway, but it's still a kind of object. So close. So you see it printed close that's the output. Now that output, when you press play button, is what interacts with your user. So you should have known by now that most of programming is done for computer users. So you are trying to solve problems of other computer users, and they might involve mathematicians, engineers. So it solves all kind of problems. So and these computers can do a lot of mental work for us. So and that is with the help of programming language. That helps us to leverage the power of computers. So now when you type something in your computer, it is more likely that you are dealing with variables. So and those variables, they are kind of like objects. So for example, if I say in Python you make immediately you make of declarative statements. So you declare your variables. So for example, if I say box, if I have a box and I have an item in that box, so the box is in that box we have some wood. So this is also correct in normal English syntax, but in Python this wood is considered as a string, so you have to enclose it in quotation marks, in quotes. So now you can see that the color of the text has changed to light brown because it now agrees with the syntax of Python. So that is where we involve syntax. So one of the way Python works fundamentally is by involving its own unique syntax. So then let's say that we have a another container. So this box wood, it helps us understand how Python works, because in Python every variable you declare is like a box, and then what is what you declare it, the value you declare to it is kind of its containment, what it contains. So every variable contains a string, it could contain a text, it contains numbers, etc. So you can say, if you say a equals 21, those of you that are familiar with mathematics, you know that this is a declaration of a variable. It's the same thing working for Python. So you can at the end of the day you can say print. Then you don't need to use quotation marks because these are objects. Print box. Then if I wanted to print two things, I'll put a comma a. So it's printing these two containers. When I click the play button, it prints that out. So you'll notice that the box is printed first. So in Python, order is obeyed. So that is how Python works. And then you can also make use of functions. Python also works with functions. For example, this print statement is a function. A function is basically defined and then called upon. So that is basically how most programming language works. You have to define an object, a variable, a function, and then you call it with an input. So this print is a function on its own. So there are many examples of inbuilt functions in Python. Print statements, which takes a string and outputs it on the string Then we also have the input function. So every function, you should have noticed that they always have some text and then opening and closing parentheses. That opening and closing parentheses, it contains the inputs, or rather let's call it contains, yes, what the function is supposed to act upon. So basically that is what these are. So if I press the play button, it will ask me to input something on the screen because of the input function, all of us. So if I press, so now that is my input. I can continue. Okay, program is finished. I have only one input. So that is basically how it works. So today we've talked about the fact that in Python everything you see is actually representing a box, and that box contains the value that has been declared to it. For example, in this first line, that box has been declared to wood, so there's wood inside that box, and that wood is a string. It's not necessarily concrete wood, it's kind of like an abstract string. Then you also have the in line, so you have a, there's another second separate container in Python, and it contains a number which is 21. Then you have the print, which is an inbuilt function. Then it contains um this print is kind of like a function, and then it acts upon the box and the A to print them on the screen. Then you also have the inputs and so on and so forth. So basically that is what we have for today. I hope you understand the fundamentals of Python, and I hope to see you next episode.